So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. Guys, I've just seen an interview with Danny Garcia, and Danny Garcia makes some really good points. Really good points. He basically speaks about his fight with Spence, and he breaks down Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence fight. Now, he said that the Errol Spence that fought Kell Brook can stop Manny Pacquiao. But he feels that the Manny Pacquiao that fought Keith Thurman could stop Errol Spence. He says that this fight's not going to go the distance. Now, he didn't really explain why this fight isn't going to go the distance. I do think Errol Spence could stop Manny Pacquiao late on in the fight. I don't think he's a big puncher. And Danny Garcia said the same thing, that Errol Spence isn't a big puncher. I think he's a solid puncher, but I don't think he's a big, knockout artist, Spence. He's got solid power. For me, he's not knockout power. It's not wow power. It's kind of power where if he keeps chipping away at you all night, eventually he'll wear you down and stop you. But it's not a one punch knockout power. And he actually said Keith Thurman's a bigger puncher than Spence. And he said that, and he goes, Keith Thurman wasn't the biggest puncher he faced. He said the biggest puncher he faced, which is not surprising to me, is Lucas Matisse. And I've said this, that I think Lucas Matisse and Marcus Maidana were probably two of the biggest punchers in the last 10-12 years in the light welter and welterweight divisions. I think those guys had serious knockout power. And again, Danny Garcia's chin, which was made out of granite, right? He was able to go toe to toe with Matisse, which, by the way, is a very very crazy thing to do. But Garcia's chin was so strong that he was able to do that. Now, I do think what Garcia is saying, I agree with what he said about Spence stopping Pacquiao, but it would be more a breakdown and stopping him late if Manny fatigues. If Manny doesn't fatigue and his stamina's on point, I don't think Spence will stop him. In terms of Spence being stopped by Pacquiao, I know a lot of the Pacquiao fans will probably jump on me on this, but I don't really see Manny stopping, because I don't think Manny's a big puncher at welterweight. I think he's got solid power. And who knows, he might even be a bigger puncher than Errol Spence, but I don't really see him stopping a big welterweight like that, if I'm honest. I think it's going to be very tough. He didn't even stop Thurman, who he probably had a better chance to stop because of Thurman's vulnerability. I don't think Spence is vulnerable. I think Spence has got a very good chin. You know, if you look at Pacquiao's career more at 147, even if he did stop guys, it was more he battered them, like he beat them up. He didn't really knock them out, like he hit them with a shot or they dropped and they fell and he, jumped them and knocked him out. Han was the only one where he knocked him out cold. Apart from that, I didn't really see him, he dropped guys, don't get me wrong, but that was more speed. That was more his speed. So I don't know. I don't think that Pacquiao's going to stop Spence. I personally think that if this fight, if Manny wins, it'll be more decision. I think if this fight goes the decision, I think Manny has a very good chance of outpointing Errol Spence. I don't see him stopping Spence. I don't know what you guys think, and I'd love to know your opinion. I don't think Manny Pacquiao will stop Errol Spence. I don't see it. I just don't see it. Now, Danny Garcia made some other points. He said Errol Spence said that he was at 70%. Danny Garcia said I wasn't 100%. I was injured. I didn't have a great camp because of the COVID pandemic. I didn't have a great camp. My camp was poor. It was hard to get sparring partners. And he goes, although it was a big fight, it didn't feel like a big fight with him and Spence. He said the pandemic didn't help. He couldn't get the sparring partners. He goes, there was in the gym, it was dull. And he goes, it wasn't a great camp. It wasn't a great camp in preparation for a fight of that magnitude. And I can understand what Danny Garcia is saying, because he was preparing for that fight during the pandemic, and it would have been very difficult. Because remember, he must have been preparing for that fight when situation was still quite bad, because that fight was in December. But remember, the preparation happens a couple of months before. So they would have been preparing in November, October. and it wouldn't have been brilliant at that time. Although the situation was getting a little better, it still wasn't brilliant. Let's be honest. Here in the UK in January, we went into another lockdown. So that just tells you how bad the situation was. They had a fight in December. We went into lockdown in January. So it just tells you how bad it still was in the UK. So I totally agree with Danny Garcia that it wouldn't have been great. However, I do think even if they did have great preparation, I think Errol Spence's style may have been all wrong. I think Spence is a very good boxer. And Spence, I don't think Garcia was ever troubled by his punching power, because like I said, Garcia's got a great chin. I just think that Spence controlled the fight very well against Danny Garcia. And Danny Garcia, I think although Furman did well against Garcia, I think the fight was a lot closer because I don't think Furman could control the fight as well as Errol Spence did against Danny Garcia. I think Errol Spence controlled the fight very well when he fought Danny Garcia, and he's actually beaten Danny Garcia better than anybody's beaten him out of Porter. And Porter fight was very close. A lot of people thought Danny won that fight. The Thurman fight was also very close. But I think most people had Thurman winning that, and I personally thought Thurman won that fight. I thought he landed the cleaner shots, and he was the better boxer out of the two. The Spence fight, Spence kind of ran away with that. I think Garcia was a bit more gun shy. See, a lot of people were disappointed because they thought Garcia didn't throw enough punches. He didn't throw as many punches in that fight, and Spence kind of walked away with it. He seemed like he was a superior boxer. Towards the back end of that fight, Danny Garcia let his hands go, and he had more success. And that begs the question: why didn't he do that early on? And his dad was also said in the post-fight press conference that he should have done that early on. What he did later on in the fight, he needed to do that early on. And we all know Danny Garcia has real punching power. If he landed on Spence, who knows? I just felt like, although Spence's performance was great, I think Danny Garcia's performance helped Spence look a lot better. We didn't really get to see the Errol Spence hit a lot in that fight because Danny didn't really land many punches. I felt like Spence controlled the fight, and this is I had a discussion about this with Ray that comes on my live streams, and he was saying, well, now the accident's still not an excuse. It's not an excuse anymore because we've seen him beat Danny Garcia in very good fashion. So that accident now is no longer an excuse because we've just seen him come back and have a good win. However, I still not sure because I think Danny Garcia didn't test him as much as I thought he would. Whereas I think Manny Pacquiao will test him a lot. He'll get hit a lot in that fight. So maybe Danny Garcia saw something in the fight that he had with Spence, and he thinks that, Manny Pacquiao could stop him, because I don't see anything in Errol Spence from what I've seen in the past that I think Manny's going to stop him. I've always said that if Manny wins this fight, it's going to be on points. So this is why I'm surprised that actually Danny thinks that Pacquiao could stop Spence. He didn't really explain what he saw. He just said that the Pacquiao that fought Thurman can stop Spence, but the Spence that fought Kell Brook can stop Manny Pacquiao. But he didn't really break it down as such. But I'm not sure. Whether Pacquiao can stop Spence. But I do think Danny Garcia made some good points. I'll check that interview with Fight Hype. Go and check it out. He made some good points about Errol Spence's power. He also made some interesting points about the Crawford and Spence fight. He said that the reason why the Crawford-Spence fight is not happening is because there's not enough money in it. He feels that the fight, although it's a great fight, he goes, sometimes politics can stop the fight. He feels that there's not enough money in it, that the fight doesn't do enough pay-per-view buys. He goes, basically, even if Crawford comes to the PBC, he still doesn't see the fight happening because he thinks that at the end of the day, boxing's a business. And he goes, Showtime are giving her a budget. Right, they're given a budget, and if they've been given a budget of 30 million, and that budget's got to be used for all the fighters, and that fight takes up 20 million, then how are they going to pay all the other fighters? The way they do it is pay-per-view. But if that fight doesn't generate enough pay-per-view numbers, then it doesn't make financial sense. So he goes, just because Terence Crawford comes to the PBC, that doesn't necessarily mean that fight happens. It comes down to financials and whether that fight makes financial sense. And he doesn't think that the fight makes financial sense. So I don't know what you guys make of it. I thought that interview was really good. I think the way the points that certain things that he mentioned were, I think, were spot on. In terms of the him saying that Pacquiao and Spence stop each other, I don't see them. I think Spence could stop Manny because of fatigue later on in the fight, but I don't really see Manny stopping. I think if Manny's going to win this fight, Manny's going to beat him on points. Manny's going to beat him on points like he did with Keith Thurman. I just look at it and I think, for me, Spence is a lot more durable than Keith Thurman. And Manny couldn't stop Keith Thurman. So I don't really see him stopping Errol Spence. I don't know what... he didn't really say what he saw to say that he feels that Pacquiao is going to stop him. Because from what I've seen in Errol Spence's career so far, he's got a solid chin. He's quite durable. So what makes him think? Is it a clash of styles that he thinks? I don't know. I don't know what he sees. I don't see Manny stopping Errol Spence. I think Manny Pacquiao could beat Errol Spence. I think there's people out there that think Manny Pacquiao can't beat Errol Spence. I disagree. I think Manny Pacquiao can beat Errol Spence and he can beat him on points. He can outwork and he can outpoint Errol Spence. And that's how I think Manny's going to win the fight against Errol Spence. In terms of stopping him, I don't see him stopping Errol Spence. But if he does stop him, I'd be surprised. And I'd be impressed if Manny Pacquiao can stop Errol Spence. I'd be very... because I haven't really seen Manny stop anybody recently. When was his last stoppage against Lucas Matisse? Matisse was past his best. And Manny just walked away with that fight. But to stop someone like Errol Spence, who's tough, who's big, who's a big, strong welterweight, who's got good boxing skills... I can't see it at this stage. I just can't see it. Maybe the old Manny Pacquiao, even the old Manny Pacquiao, I don't think the old Manny Pacquiao would have stopped Errol Spence. Possibly stopped him, wearing him down and the referee jumping in, but not knockout, like a Hatton knockout. I just don't see a stoppage here. And to be honest with you, I would be surprised a stoppage either way, if I'm honest. I think the only way Spence stops Pacquiao is if he wears Pacquiao down and Manny Pacquiao gets tired later on in the fight. I don't see one-punch knockout here. You know, in boxing, anything can happen. Anyone can get caught with a shot. But from going off Errol Spence's career, I don't see him just hitting Pacquiao with a shot and Pacquiao getting hurt and getting stopped. No, I don't see that. I see a breakdown where Pacquiao getting fatigued if there's going to be a stoppage. So, again, I don't see a stoppage either way. The only way I see a stoppage is if Manny gets tired and Spence jumps on him and wears him down. He's also mentioned that he feels that Pacquiao could be stopped with a body shot. Pacquiao's not really shown any vulnerability to the body. He has been knocked out, but they were headshots. I don't really see Manny being stopped. I don't really see Errol being stopped. The only way I see Pacquiao being stopped is if he gets worn down, if he gets tired, fatigue, and then just, him getting dropped that way. And more of a tiredness, like we saw with Mayweather-McGregor. It wasn't so much Mayweather's punching power, it was more fatigue. I think it was more fatigue stopping McGregor in that fight. And I think that's the same with Manny, to be honest, if he was to get stopped. I just don't see Manny stopping Errol Spence though. But I can see Manny winning this fight on points. But I can also see Errol winning this fight on points. And I can also see Errol stopping Manny late due to tiredness. But Manny stopping Errol Spence, that's not, for me, a likely outcome. But I would be surprised. And that would be impressive. Manny Pacquiao was able to stop Errol Spence. Oh my goodness, that would be some performance from Pacquiao. That would be some performance, and I think it would just add to his legacy even greater. If he wins a close decision, that would be unbelievable. But if he stops Errol Spence, my goodness, where does that put him then? by stopping a guy that's in the top 5 pound for pound, that's in his prime, that's undefeated, that's a unified welterweight champion. That puts Manny Pacquiao on, wow. For me, Manny Pacquiao becomes pound for pound #1 at 42, and he, like, he's in the argument of GOAT status, really. But yeah, leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think about Danny Garcia's interview. If you haven't seen it, go and have a look at what he had to say. But yeah, guys, leave your thoughts. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.